I love the van.
I think our plan for today is
Gabby Petito never goes outside.
So, we are right outside Capitol Reef right now in a free dispersed camp spot. And we've been lucky so far at all the places we've stayed, but I'd say this is one of the best so far. Since we left New York, I've only set up my hammock once, and now we're all the way in Utah, and luckily enough, I was able to set up my hammock in one of these trees.
Dr. Brent Blue, Teton County, Wyoming coroner. After a detailed investigation by our forensic pathologist, our anthropologist, and local law enforcement, with assistance from the FBI, the Teton County Coroner's Office is following the following verdict. In the manner of death of Gabrielle Lenora Petito, we find the cause and manner to be death by strangulation, and manner is homicide.
Grant County Sheriff's Office.
Hi, can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I'm right on the corner of Main Street by Moonflower, and we're driving by, and I'd like to report a domestic dispute. Florida with the white van, Florida license plate, white land, gentleman,
Where's
about
it at?
5'6" beard. They just drove off. They're going down Main Street. They made a right onto Main Street from Moonflower.
Or what were they doing?
Cooperative, but what'd you say?
What were they doing?
We drove by, and the gentleman was slapping the girl.
He was slapping her?
Yes, and then we stopped. They ran up and down the sidewalk. He proceeded to hit her, hopped in the car, and they drove off.
Okay, you said it's a white van?
White van. I can give you the license plate. Just give me 1 sec. I took a picture of it.
Sorry, officer. You want to place your vehicle into park and go ahead and turn it off for me?
I'm sorry.
No, park.
Oh, it is in park, yeah.
Okay, turn off your engine. Go ahead and set your keys on the dash for me. All right. What's your guys' names?
Gabby.
I'm Brian.
Gabby, Brian. Okay. What's going on? How come you're crying?
The FBI says that the skeletal remains found in a nature preserve in Florida on Wednesday are in fact those of Brian Laundrie.
Law enforcement had considered Laundrie the only person of interest in the murder of his fiancée, Gabby Petito.
I'm sorry, we've just been fighting this morning. Some personal issues.
It was a long day. We were camping yesterday, and camping got the stuff, flies and stuff. I'm sorry I hit the bump there.
I was distracting him from driving. I'm sorry.
Can I get you to step out of the vehicle for me, man?
Yeah.
Just hang tight right there.
This bodycam footage gives us a rare glimpse behind the camera into a seemingly picture-perfect couple. It shows many of the warning signs of a toxic relationship where one individual takes all accountability and the other is a master manipulator. In this short clip, Gabby has apologized 3 times for the events that led them to being pulled over.
You want to play?
I'm sorry. I was distracting him from driving. I'm sorry.
Even when Brian says he is to blame for hitting the curb, she quickly speaks up and excuses his behavior because of her own.
You want to tell me what's going on?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just some days I have really bad OCD.
At this point, Gabby has been conditioned to believe that her cleanliness is a compulsive disorder. From her YouTube channel, you can see that she likes to keep things in an organized fashion, including her tent and her food. This is a far stone's throw, however, from someone with clinical OCD who would most likely never be able to live in a van or go camping for weeks at a time.
10 is just coming in on me. The wind is so bad. I've just been sitting here like this for a while.
Much of the verbiage you hear from her in this segment sounds like repeated accusations she has been told time and time again, as though she has adopted them into her own identity.
You want to tell me what's going on?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just some days I have really bad OCD, and
Okay.
I was just cleaning when he was straightening up the back of the van before, and I was apologizing to him and saying, I'm sorry that I'm so mean, because sometimes I have OCD and sometimes I just get really frustrated. Not like mean towards him. I just I guess my vibe is like I appear to be like in a bad mood.
I guess my vibe is where I appear to be in a bad mood. This is fed information. She says, I guess my vibe is...
I guess my vibe is like...
She hasn't come to this conclusion. She has been told it. These are his words, not hers.
And I think you said something about why you're being so mean, something like that.
and she has heard them so often that she now believes them.
I'm sorry that I'm so mean.
She says, where I appear to be in a bad mood.
I appear to be like in a bad mood.
How can you know what you appear to be from the outside? Someone else would have to tell you. She even laughs it off a bit, indicating that somewhere deep down, she knows it's not true.
I appear to be like in a bad mood.
Gabby's perception of herself, along with her memory of events, has been altered. We'll find out later that this fight stemmed from Brian's lack of cleanliness, yet she ends up apologizing for holding him accountable and reacting to his choices. He claims no responsibility and will deflect everything onto her.
And I was just saying, I'm sorry if I'm in a bad mood. I've just been really stressed. I had so much work I was doing on my computer this morning.
What do you do for a living?
Here is Brian Laundrie's recollection of the same fight.
So, if you don't mind, start at the beginning for me.
Start at the beginning. I don't want to go too far back, but we've been in...
Brian begins with a deflection, knowing that if they dig too deep into the conflict, they may run into details surrounding the 911 call. Upon being pulled over, he was informed about it.
Hey, we got a call about a male hitting a female and the two of them getting in this vehicle and taking off.
So I don't want to try and defend myself by saying anything here, but I pushed her away. She gets really worked up, and when she does, she swings, and she had her cell phone in her hand, so I was just trying to push her away.
He is now focused on controlling the narrative and self-preservation.
And for the past week or so, traveling around, and the flies here are pretty intense, so the flies have definitely been getting to her.
This is where Brian's skill at manipulation and gaslighting are on full display. Everything Gabby spoke about during her account used I verbiage, where she took the blame. Here, Brian uses her and she verbiage, where he passes all the blame onto her. The bugs have really been getting to her, is the first example.
And then my feet are dirty and everything, so I think that our little squabble started because we were hanging out at the coffee shop.
The two primary tactics of someone who uses gaslighting as manipulation are deflection, as seen in the first clip, and minimization, seen here. Deflection passes off the blame of one's own actions to another. Minimization is the act of lowering something to smaller or less important than it really is. Brian says, our little squabble, to lead the officers away from the topic. He also minimizes Gabby's aspiration for a travel blog later by saying, her little blog. He repeats this strategy while talking about his lack of cleanliness as he portrays Gabby to be overly neurotic. Brian uses minimization and deflection throughout this interview in tandem and successfully tricks the officers into believing he is innocent and that Gabby is the aggressor.
And when we got back to the van, there was some dirt and stuff in the van, and I moved our food around, it was a little disorganized, so she gets a little... Sorry about that. But we just had a little disagreement there. And the disagreement was just that she was getting a little worked up, and I was saying, no, it's okay, thank you so much.
Brian starts his sentence here. The disagreement was that she was getting worked up, and I was saying... He then cuts to the officer and declines the water by stating, no, it's okay. But the sentence flows as one. As the listener, you hear, she was getting worked up, and I was saying, no, it's okay. His inflection and tonality blend into one sentence, and listening to the words he communicates this same version where she is to blame and he is the rational person trying to calm her down. It is stealthily disguised in the moment and creates a double entendre with his refusal of the water.
But we just had a little disagreement there. And the disagreement was just that she was getting a little worked up, and I was saying, no, it's okay, thank you so much.
As long as it's cool, that's good.
So it was just more of a disagreement, and I just wanted to say...
What was the disagreement about?
It was, I wouldn't even call it disagreement. It was just that I'm dirty and I can't change being dirty. Like, I got dirty feet, I got sand on my flip-flops and stuff like that.
The one phrase that sticks out here is when Brian says, I'm dirty and I can't change.
I'm dirty and I can't change being dirty.
This is not true. Brian is unwilling to change and unwilling to acknowledge it. He knows that Gabby is predisposed to a clean environment. He has labeled this preference as irrational while he chooses to ignore it.
I have really bad OCD, and I was just cleaning and straightening up the back of the van.
And fully admits to tracking dirt throughout the van as he moved things around.
And then my feet are dirty and everything, so I think that our little squabble started because we were hanging out at the coffee shop, and when we got back to the van, there was some dirt and stuff in the van, and I moved our food around, like I got dirty feet, I got sand on my flip-flops and stuff like that.
He minimizes these actions the entire time as inevitable and not a big deal. The thing is, they are a big deal to her.
I'm have OCD, and sometimes I just get really frustrated, really stressed. I had so much work I was doing on my computer.
He then successfully convinces Gabby that it is her neuroses causing the conflict and not his callous disconsideration for her state of being. Somehow, she ended up apologizing for her reaction to his mess, and he claims nothing.
I have really bad OCD, and I was just cleaning and straightening up the back of the van before, and I was apologizing to him and saying, I'm sorry that I'm so mean.
I'm dirty and I can't change being dirty. Like, I got dirty feet, I got sand on my flip-flops and stuff like that. It was that we were at the coffee shop for so long because we were there from 9 to 3. So I guess there's a few little things, little relationships. I don't know if you're in a relationship, but I'm sure you
I've been married for over 5 years now. So
there's a lot of little things.
Yeah, I can go.
And
I get it.
We really.
Now that he has painted his picture, Brian elicits acknowledgement from the officer by asking if they have also experienced anything similar. He's saying, have you ever felt like your significant other has overreacted about something you don't care about? Oftentimes, manipulators who use gaslighting will try to get a third party on their side, especially if they are painting their partner as irrational. The officer responds, I get it. Brian has successfully built rapport through joint minimization.
I get it.
We weren't physical before the point where I said, all right, let's just take a breather and like walk away for a minute. I'll lock the van up and I'll go for a walk this way, and you can go walk that way on the block. You know, there's that what is it called, moonflower?
Right.
Yeah. You know, nice areas. You can go either way. It's all shaded. So let's go for a little walk and breather, come back. We're happy with it.
Gaslighting as manipulation is meant to take the blame off of the person manipulating and onto the other party. Here, Brian uses something called sharing the blame. In order to take the focus off of himself, he uses we verbiage. He starts by saying, it didn't get physical, but quickly corrects himself to, we didn't get physical until. This is the same as someone coming back around and saying, well, we were both out of line, or there's blame on both sides. It is a deflection. It's a sort of justification for his own actions because both parties were physical. Here, however, the devil is in the details. When dealing with this phenomenon, the two parties' actions need to be separated. Finding the motivation and intention for each and determining who is at fault for what is crucial. If you let them loop your actions into theirs, then both parties are at fault and neither is to blame. This concludes that indirectly, they are not to blame.
We weren't physical before the point where I said, all right, let's just take a breather and like walk away for a minute.
Brian is also using clever wordplay at this point to minimize his role in the event. He chooses to say, we didn't get physical until, but that sentence starts with, we didn't get physical. As a listener, you hear, we didn't get physical. Minimization is often sly and subtle, the same as how he uses it here. Lastly, he says, we didn't get physical until I asked her to calm down and walk away, painting himself as the calm, rational one, trying to settle her down, and her as the aggressor. We know, however, from the 911 call that at least one witness described him as slapping her repeatedly. Without the knowledge of that call, Brian's story would sound like she was hysterical and he was doing everything in his power to defuse the situation. There is no mention of him becoming violent, and you will see him successfully minimize this behavior over the course of his account.
We weren't physical before the point where I said, all right, let's just take a breather and like walk away for a minute. I'll lock the van up and I'll go for a walk this way, and you can go walk that way on the block. You know, there's that what is it called, moonflower?
Right.
Yeah. You know, nice areas. You can go either way.
Put yourself in Gabby's shoes here. On this morning, she and Brian spent 6 hours at a coffee shop where she was working on her website and travel blog.
We were at the coffee shop for so long because we were there from 9 to 3.
A point of interest here is that Brian did not believe in this venture, something that they both knew very clearly.
I'm trying to start a blog. I just have a blog and stuff, so I've been building my website, so I've just been really stressed, and he doesn't really believe that I could do any of it, so that's kind of been like a, I don't know, he's like down there, I don't know.
What happened this morning is that she's trying to start up like her own little website blog and everything, so...
Gabby had quit her job as a nutritionist to go on this trip and had put everything into this work, adding additional pressure on her to make sure it was successful, all without a support system.
I used to work at an all-organic juice bar, but I just quit my job.
Okay.
I was a nutritionist. That was my
That's
job.
cool.
And I just quit my job to travel across the country.
Working in this environment, next to someone who doesn't believe in her, Gabby was undoubtedly in an agitated state.
We'd have been fighting all morning, just really stressed. I had so much work I was doing on my computer this morning, and he really stresses me out.
She gets even more upset when Brian tracks dirt throughout the van, and here is where he turns on the gaslighting. She is upset with him about something that he has done, but he turns it back on her completely.
And he wouldn't let me in the car before. And
Why wouldn't he let you in the car? Because
he
of
told
your
me
OCD?
told me I needed to calm down.
Why is the officer here guessing at what her answer is going to be? Why does he feed her because of your OCD? In my opinion, it is a mistake by law enforcement. He is there to collect information from her. There is a suspected domestic assault. Any details fed to a victim can be repeated back as though it is what she is supposed to say. Gabby pushes back and answers with her truth. However, she could easily be made to feel like the officer also thinks she has OCD by his comment and is not going to empathize with her. In all actuality, Brian told her to calm down in order to shift blame from himself for his own mess. Yet the officer is already directing the responsibility of that confrontation back at Gabby. He should be gathering the statement directly from her words, not guessing ahead of time at what she might say.
And he wouldn't let me in the car before.
Why wouldn't he let you in the car? Because of
He
your
told
OCD?
me I needed to calm down. Yeah.
Gabby was put on timeout by Brian. He treated her like a child with a temper tantrum rather than an adult person with feelings that are justified.
And he wouldn't let me in the car before.
Why wouldn't he let you in the car? Because of your OCD?
He told me I needed to calm down.
I get it.
We weren't physical before the point where I said, all right, let's just take a breather and like walk away for a minute. I'll lock the van up and I'll go for a walk this way and you can go walk that way.
Let me be clear in saying that there is nothing wrong with taking a break when emotions are high and either person needs to calm down. That is not what happened here. Gaslighting is all about control. It can be control of the situation or the narrative, but ultimately the goal is the control of the other person. Brian took full control over the entire situation while at the same time minimizing Gabby's complaint. The healthy tactic that he was explaining acted as a disguise for this intention. The officers were led to believe that because he was using a healthy conflict resolution strategy, that he was also acting in good faith.
We weren't physical before the point where I said, all right, let's just take a breather and like walk away for a minute. I'll lock the van up and I'll go for a walk this way and you can go walk that way on the block. You know, there's that what is it called? Moonflower?
Right.
Yeah. You know, nice areas. You can go either way. It's all shaded. So let's go for a little walk and breathe and come back. We're happy with it.
It was not in good faith. Brian told her what her feelings were, where to go, and how to process them. One of the easiest ways to identify gaslighting is to confront someone directly with how you feel regarding something they've done. Signs of a healthy reaction are someone who listens.
I guess my vibe is like I hear me like in a bad mood.
Openly analyzes.
And I was just saying, I'm sorry if I'm in a bad mood. I've just been really stressed. I had so much work I was doing on my computer this morning.
Empathizes and even apologizes for their portion of the conflict.
I was apologizing to him and saying, I'm sorry that I'm so mean.
Gaslighting often makes the victim feel crazy. Their feelings are being minimized, reactions are being mislabeled, blame is being deflected, and at the core of it all, they still have a grievance with their abuser that is left unresolved.
He told me I needed to calm down. Yeah. But I'm perfectly calm. I'm calm all the time. And he really stresses me out. And
Gabby felt this way here and was locked out of her own vehicle, isolated from her belongings as well as the only person she knew in the vicinity, and was told she was expected to get over it. Brian would not change.
I'm dirty and I can't change being dirty. Like I got dirty feet, I got sand on my flip-flops and stuff like that. I'm not upset with her.
This is a classic manipulation. I said I'm not upset with her. This statement can be true. He could not have been upset with her, but she was upset with him. Gabby was upset with Brian. In a relationship, you have a right to be upset with the other person for choices they have made. This is not conditional on them also being upset with you. It is the definition of gaslighting to make the other person feel like they shouldn't be angry with you just because you are not upset with them. His statement here, however, is not true. It is wildly misleading. The 911 call happened at this point in the fight where he was identified as slapping her. In his own account later, he will describe the fight like this.
And then I got really loud, and like that's probably drew everyone's attention where I was going, back up, get away, just give me a...
He minimizes his own reaction to sell himself as in control, which also implies that hers is an overreaction and that she is out of control.
She got a little worked up, and she had a phone in her hand and the keys and everything. And she wanted, not her keys, like her rings. She had rings, the phone. And I was holding on to the keys because I didn't want to go anywhere. And my big fear is, I don't have my phone. I don't have my phone.
Later, an eyewitness will state that Brian was trying to take Gabby's phone.
It seemed like they were sort of squabbling over a phone. I want to say that he was trying to grab her phone.
He will also state that Brian was inside of the van trying to drive off.
And then he was stepping in and she was out trying to get in.
I said, all right, let's just take a breather and like walk away for a minute. I'll lock the van up and I'll go for a walk this way and you can go walk that way in the block.
But then it got more strange as he was in the vehicle about to drive off.
Accusations are very often confessions. An easy way for someone to gaslight you into thinking they didn't do something is to convince you that you were the one doing it. The witness stated that Brian was trying to take Gabby's phone, push her out of the car, and drive off.
But then it got more strange as he was in the vehicle about to drive off.
Yet Brian says here he was trying to lock up the van and both of them would take a walk.
I'll lock the van up and I'll go for a walk this way and you can go walk that way in the block.
He states bold-faced that he was afraid that Gabby would do to him exactly what he was trying to do to her.
And my big fear is, I don't have my phone, I don't have a phone, so she goes off without me. But I'm on my own.
If he had been successful in taking her phone and leaving her there to calm down, she would have had no choice but to wait for him and apologize when he returned. This is also Brian's big reveal. In Brian's account, Gabby is so unstable that after a fight over dirt in the van, she might take all of his things and abandon her fiancé in the middle of nowhere after being on the road for over a month together. The officers don't even bat an eyelash. Here on screen, he is nodding along in agreement. They don't ask a single follow-up question. Has she done anything like that before? There is not an ounce of thought put into the likelihood of this outcome. More importantly, they don't ask, whose name is the van in? Who owns it? What is the legality of Brian's actions here? These clips are fascinating because you see gaslighting portrayed by one individual, but also because you see multiple adults in positions of power and public safety completely fall for it.
I was saying, let's just go for a walk, and she was trying to get the keys for me, so I was just going, just wait, back up, and that's when she hit me, and I did.
We drove by, and the gentleman was slapping the girl.
He was slapping her?
Yes, and then we stopped. They ran up and down the sidewalk. He proceeded to hit her.
That's when she hit me, and I didn't get, I don't want to push you, but I didn't get overtly physical. I was just trying to keep her away and not get hit. And then I got really loud, and like that's probably drew everyone's attention where I was going, back up, get away, just give me a...
Okay, so you said you pushed her to create some distance, obviously, right?
You pushed her to create some distance, obviously, right? The officer has completely bought into Brian's story and is reinforcing it with details.
Okay, so you said you pushed her to create some distance, obviously, right? What happened after that?
Another officer did follow up with a witness, and this is what he stated.
It was unclear what was going on to me, but it did seem like he was... it seemed like he was trying to close off the passenger side of the vehicle and close things up. It almost seemed like he put that backpack or something on the back of the vehicle, I'm not sure. And then he was stepping in and she was out trying to get in. So maybe,
okay.
I don't, it was, the whole thing was off. And so, no, I didn't see anything that was like him taking chasing after her or hitting her or vice versa. It was kind of light and they were almost kind of laughing, and I wasn't sure if they were just joking around, to be honest, but then it got more strange as he was in the vehicle about to drive off.
A few key takeaways. Gabby was outside of the car trying to get in, and Brian was inside keeping her out. Although the 911 caller, who is a different person,
I thought about calling it in, but as soon as I walked up this bar, there was another gentleman who was already calling it in, so I was like, oh, good on you.
thought he was slapping her, this witness saw Brian as pushing Gabby out of the van. He was also at one point trying to take Gabby's phone from her.
It seemed like they were sort of squabbling over a phone. I want to say that he was trying to grab her phone, and I'm not sure exactly why.
Where was this in Brian's testimony?
She got worked up and she had her phone in her hand and her keys and everything. And she wanted, not her keys, her rings. She had her rings, her phone. And I was holding on to the keys because I didn't want to go anywhere.
He summarizes that Brian wasn't attacking Gabby and says, or vice versa. Gabby was not overtly attacking Brian. His injuries came from Gabby trying to climb over him into the car. From Brian's account, he is telling Gabby to go take a break, but he fails to mention to the police that he was trying to stay in the van, and per one account, trying to drive away.
Just take a breather and like walk away for a minute. I'll lock the van up and I'll go for a walk this way, and you can go walk that way in the block. You know, there's that what is it called, Moonflower? Right. Yeah, nice areas. You can go either way. It's all shaded, so just go for a little walk and breathe or come back. Just breathe. Yeah, we're happy with it.
His words suggest that he was trying to lock them both out of the van to go separate ways and cool down. However, instead, what he accused her of doing, or potentially doing, he was doing himself.
Back up, get away, just get in.
Okay, so you said you pushed her to create some distance, obviously, right? What happened after that? What got the scratches on your eye?
The phone.
The phone? So you pushed her and she hit you?
She was... it wasn't like a push and she jumped on me.
This officer and the one on the phone separately interject, adding in that Gabby was hitting Brian.
No, I didn't see anything that was like him chasing after her or hitting her or vice versa. It was kind of light and they were almost kind of laughing, and I wasn't sure if they were just joking around, to be honest, but then it got more strange as he was in the vehicle about to drive off.
But you did see her slapping him, though, it sounds like.
A perception bias is a psychological tendency to lose objectivity in perception of people and situations. People may believe they are able to evaluate an event fairly and accurately, including making judgments about situations, but a number of biases interact with the way they perceive events. Listen to the way this opening question is posed.
Was the shove Was the shove or push an aggression towards her, or was it a defensive maneuver away from her or to get her away from him?
When someone poses a set of options, the choice they emphasize reveals the perception bias of the person asking the question. Was the shove or push an aggression towards her, or was it a defensive maneuver away from her or to get her away from him? He slows down and uses over 3 times as many words to describe the one that excuses Brian's shoving of Gabby. Lastly, he corrects himself from, was the shove or push like a, push sounds much less aggressive than shove.
Was the shove or push an aggression towards her, or was it a defensive maneuver away from her or to get her away from him?
Skip back to Brian, where the officers also add details from their own narrative to his story.
You said you pushed her to create some distance, obviously, right? What happened after that? What got the scratches on your eye?
The phone.
The phone? So you pushed her and she hit you?
It wasn't like a push and she jumped on me. She was already, I don't want to, she was already swinging, and I was a lot of angles, a lot of nails, a lot of rings.
This officer just helped Brian with his narrative.
She was already, she was already swinging, and I was a lot of angles, a lot of nails, a lot of rings.
Yeah, you got 3 scratches on your neck. You got 1 on your left side of your nose. You got 1 in your face here, and you got 4 bleeding over there. So it looks like 2 hands coming in. Do you mind lifting up your right sleeve for me? I'm curious about something.
When a bias comes into anyone's mind, it will inevitably affect their perception. It can be a bias towards a certain individual, or race, or gender. It can be predetermined, or it can even take shape as more information is learned. Nevertheless, once that opinion is formed, impartiality is lost.
I suppose.
Look at this next gesture.
Fingernails, but I'm not complaining.
Look at the mark on his arm. What is he doing?
I suppose fingernails, but I'm not complaining.
This small action reinforces Brian's story, painting Gabby as a malicious attacker, as if her nails were drawn and she was intending to do harm.
Is it bruised or tender or anything like
No.
that?
Okay. I'm fine, and I love Gabby. I hope she doesn't have too many complaints about me.
This statement feels to me as if it should have been recognized as a red flag.
I hope she doesn't have too many complaints about me.
Perhaps hindsight is just 20/20, and I feel that way because I know the outcome. But I hope she doesn't have any complaints about me. Sounds like the verbiage of an abuser. His nervous laugh at the end is an indicator that he is worried about what she might say in her account.
I hope she doesn't have too many complaints about me. I'm just, I feel bad I think it's so public.
Brian has expressed no remorse for any of his actions during this conflict. However, he does feel bad that it got so public, that other people noticed what was going on, and he had to be held accountable.
It's so public. I was just trying to be loud to listen. I try to make her calm down and be like, look, everyone's watching. And like, stop this.
His last admission is that he was being so loud that other people noticed. From the eyewitness account, he was in the van keeping Gabby out of it. Paired with his story, he only realized at the end that people were watching them. At this point, he quickly let Gabby into the van and drove away. These are not the actions of a calm and rational person who is in the right. He saw that people were watching and instantly stopped his crusade for a calm break, let Gabby in, and fled the scene.
Listen. I try to make her calm down and be like, look, everyone's watching. And like, stop this.
Hang tight for me.
A first-party witness is someone who was involved in the event. Here, that would be Gabby and Brian. A second-party witness is someone who observed the event but has an interest or connection to one of the first-party individuals, like a friend or a family member. A third party is someone who has no vested interest in either of them. They do not know the people involved at all. Two different officers took statements from two first-party participants, Gabby and Brian, as well as one third-party witness over the phone. The next step they took was to meet together and make a judgment about what happened and how to proceed forward.
I just got on the phone with one of those two witnesses, and I reported it. You want me to tell you what he said? Yeah. Real quick. Do you mind hanging with him for a minute?
They determined that all three parties are in agreement that Gabby was the primary aggressor attacking Brian.
Everything she's saying is the same thing. I haven't heard what he said, but if that's what he said, it's also what the...
During their conversation, the officers make no mention of the inconsistencies between Brian's story and that of the third-party witness. For example, Brian's details about locking Gabby out of the van did not match.
We weren't physical before the point where I said, all right, let's just take a breather and like walk away for a minute. I'll lock the van up and I'll go for a walk this way and you can go walk.
The third-party witness states multiple times that Brian was in the car, locking Gabby out, and trying to drive away.
It seems like he had sort of blocked the one side of the van and sort of wasn't letting her in, and then the male was stepping into the driver's seat, and she was trying to get into the van, and then he was stepping in and she was out trying to get in. So maybe
okay.
Honest, but then it got more strange as he was in the vehicle about to drive.
The officer on the phone tells this to the officer who heard Brian's full statement as well.
Said that she was trying to get in. She eventually couldn't get in and actually clawed her way in through the driver's door. He says, I don't understand why she's doing that. Well, I think it's because it was the only door that wasn't locked.
Brian omitted details about trying to take Gabby's phone.
they were sort of squabbling over a phone. I want to say that he was trying to grab her phone, and I'm not sure exactly why.
The nature and severity of the physical confrontation was also not consistent. The third-party witness describes it like this.
I remember he sort of hit him a few times, and it wasn't like slugs in the face, but just kind of like two kids kind of fighting. They reminded me of very mature, I don't know, children sort of fighting.
He goes into more detail later.
No, I didn't see anything that was like him chasing after her or hitting her or vice versa. It was kind of light, and they were almost kind of laughing, and I wasn't sure if they were just joking around, to be honest, but then it got more strange as he was in the vehicle about to drive off.
The officer with sunglasses took that statement and had this conversation with Gabby.
Is there something on your cheek here? Looks like, did you get hit in the face? Kind of looks like something like hit you in the face. And then over on your arm, shoulder, right here. That's new, huh? It's kind of a new mark.
Oh yeah, I don't know.
Can I see the other side of your face? So, what happened here and here?
Victims of abuse will commonly minimize or deny their partner's actions. They may claim they fell downstairs or bumped into something by accident. Gabby was trying to get in the front passenger door and the backpack was on the back of the van, but she says this.
I'm not sure it was I was just trying to get in the back of the car and his backpack was on the back. And got me.
Next, Gabby deflects onto herself repeatedly, saying that she struck first, and minimizes Brian's actions by saying they weren't blatant punches.
So the backpack gotcha? So there's two people that came to us and told us that they saw him hit you. There's two people saying that they saw him punch you. We're just independent witnesses by Moonflower.
Well, to be honest, I definitely hit him first.
Where'd you hit him?
I slapped him.
You slapped him first? And then just on his face?
You get to kind of just shut up.
How many times did you slap?
Where Brian's conversation feels more like an interview, at this point is where Gabby's felt like an interrogation. Set aside the disparity between being outside casually talking to officers as opposed to her being in the back of the truck. As soon as Gabby admitted to slapping Brian, the sunglassed officer lost all interest in her bruises. He asked 4 questions in 8 seconds back to back, even cutting her off at the end instead of asking her follow-up questions about her story. Isn't what Brian was saying in that moment important to the situation?
Well, to be honest, I definitely hit him first.
Where'd you hit him?
I slapped him.
You slapped him first? And then just on his face?
You get to kind of just shut up.
How many times did you slap him?
Romeo, India, Alpha.
Just a couple.
And then what? And his reaction was to do what?
I hung around him so I wouldn't slap him.
He just grabbed you?
Yeah.
Did he hit you?
This witness, who has been denying and minimizing for her boyfriend, just told this officer he grabbed her arm so tightly it became bruised. Yet he says, so he just grabbed you? Like taking Gabby by the arm so forcefully it bruises is nothing. He continues on to more questions about whether or not Brian directly hit her, as if this is the only action that would make his actions inappropriate.
And then what? And his reaction was to do what?
I hung around him so I wouldn't slap him.
He just grabbed you?
Yeah.
Did he hit you though? I mean, it's okay if you're saying you hit him, and then I understand if he hit you, but we want to know the truth if he actually hit you.
I guess, yeah, but I hit him first.
Where did he hit you? Don't worry, just be honest.
He grabbed my face, just like, I guess. He didn't hit me in the face, he didn't punch me in the face or anything.
Did he slap your face or what?
Well, he grabbed me with his nail, and I guess that's why it was. I definitely have a cut right here because I could feel it when I touched it and burned.
Per Gabby's account, she had bruises on her arm and a cut on her face from Brian. The 911 caller thought he was slapping her.
We drove by and the gentleman was slapping the girl.
He was slapping her?
Yes, and then we stopped.
The witness on the phone said that she was mostly play fighting with him until he tried to drive away with her car, and Brian said this.
So, I was saying, let's just go for a walk, and she was trying to get the keys for me, so I was just going, just wait back up, and that's when she hit me, and I didn't get, I don't want to push you, but I didn't get overtly physical. I was just trying to keep her away, and
The only thing that is clear for certain when listening to these 4 accounts is that they do not match each other.
Everything she's saying is the same thing. I haven't heard what he said, but if that's what he said, it's also what the witness.
A confirmation bias is the tendency to search for, interpret, and recall information in a way that confirms or supports one's prior beliefs. People display this bias when they select information that supports their views, ignoring contrary information, or when they interpret ambiguous evidence as supporting their existing attitudes. One indicator could be asking leading questions to elicit specific information.
Was the shove was the shove or push an aggression towards her, or was it a defensive maneuver away from her or to get her away from him?
It can be apparent in how someone interprets information. The witness states neither of them were attacking each other, but listen to the officer's follow-up question.
No, I didn't see anything that was like him taking after her or hitting her or vice versa. It was kind of light and they were almost kind of laughing, and I wasn't sure if they were just joking around, to be honest, but then it got more strange as he was in the vehicle about to drive off.
But you did see her slapping him, though, it sounds like.
A confirmation bias can also be seen in how someone relays information to another person.
The witness says, I never saw him hit her, I saw him shove her, but I couldn't tell if it was an aggression against her or a defense against her, as far as her, being...
He uses the exact verbiage from his own question and quotes it as from the witness. Here is his question.
Was the shove or push an aggression towards her, or was it a defensive maneuver away from her or to get her away from him?
Here he uses those same words to quote the witness.
I saw him hit her, I saw him shove her, but I couldn't tell if it was an aggression against her or a defense against.
Listen to the witness's answer to that question.
No, I didn't see anything that was like him taking after her or hitting her or vice versa. It was kind of light and they were almost kind of laughing, and I wasn't sure if they were just joking around, to be honest, but then it got more strange as he was in the vehicle about to drive off.
He states he did not see Brian hitting her or her hitting him. It was mostly playful until Brian was in the car trying to drive away.
Him hit her, I saw him shove her, but I couldn't tell if it was an aggression against her or a defense against.
The officer is quoting his own question as the response to that question, when in truth, the witness gave a very detailed answer in which he said neither party was trying to attack the other. His misrepresentation of this reply supports the claim that Gabby was the aggressor in this conflict, rather than a narrative where they were play fighting until Brian tried to take the vehicle, which is a completely different story.
Him hit her, I saw him shove her, but I couldn't tell if it was an aggression against her or a defense against her, as far as her,
He caps off his sentence with, as far as her being the aggressor. As far as is used to show someone's opinion or to limit a statement. Here is all the information summarized as far as her being the aggressor. He uses the verbiage from his own question, quoted as the witness's statement, to justify this conclusion.
Him hit her, I saw him shove her, but I couldn't tell if it was an aggression against her or a defense against her, as far as her, being the aggressor.
Lastly, a confirmation bias can affect our memory, including how we remember things. His first statement here is very important.
Same thing,
He claims he hasn't heard what Brian has been saying. Keep this in mind as you watch him arrive on scene.
How's it going?
How are we doing?
Good. Hey, we got a call about a male hitting a female and the two of them getting in this vehicle and taking off.
So I don't want to try and defend myself by saying anything here, but I pushed her away. She gets really worked up, and when she does, she swings, and she had her cell phone in her hand, so I was just trying to push her away. But Gabrielle, you're talking about fiance, right?
What's that?
He listens in further during Brian's interview.
I know to keep her rings, phone, and I was holding on to the keys because I didn't want to go anywhere. And my big fear is, I don't have my phone, I don't have a phone, so she goes off without me. It's alright, I'm on my own. So I was saying, let's just go for a walk, and she was trying to get the keys for me, so I was just going, just wait back up, and then that's when she hit me, and I didn't get, I don't want to push you, but I didn't get completely physical. I'm just trying to keep her away and not get hit. And then I got really loud, and I just like fear this attention where I was going, back up, get away, just get me.
Okay, so you said you pushed her to create some distance, obviously, right? What happened after that? What got the scratches on?
Okay, Google.
All of this information was taken directly from Brian before calling the third party, yet he still says,
Same thing, I haven't heard what he said, but if that's what he said, it's also...
This statement is categorically false, and it leads to a false conclusion. He has heard what Brian was saying, and he is misrepresenting what the witness told him to reinforce that version of events. The inconsistencies from the third-party witness, however, should have caused Brian to lose credibility rather than gain it. Instead, because the sunglassed officer is remembering all the information as being from either Gabby or the man on the phone, Brian's story is taken as truth. It is being viewed as corroborated by the other testimonies.
Same thing, I haven't heard what he said, but if that's what he said, it's also what the witness is saying. The witness says, I never saw him hit her, I saw him shove her, but I couldn't tell if it was an aggression against her or a defense against her, as far as her, being...
For further evidence of this confirmation bias, here is a conversation this same officer had with another after speaking to Gabby.
She seems like a really sweet girl, 22 or something, has a lot of anxiety, and from what she's claiming, she's the full-on aggressor here. I'd love to go talk to the independent witnesses, and maybe that's what I'll go do.
He came to this conclusion after speaking with Gabby for 6 minutes in total. They spoke for only 3 minutes about the physical confrontation, and as soon as she admitted to hitting Brian, he stopped asking questions about it entirely and moved on to why they hit the curb. This bias was taken into the phone call with the third-party witness and ultimately shaped his entire conclusion about what had actually happened.
I have to engage with her. Everything she's saying is same thing. I haven't heard what he said, but if that's what he said, it's also what the witness is saying. The witness says, I never saw him hit her, I saw him shove her, but I couldn't tell if it was an aggression against her or a defense against her, as far as her, being the aggressor.
Up to this point, in each of the interviews, there is one crucial question that was not asked at all. Who owns the van? If they had been married, this would not have mattered. However, they were only engaged, and therefore property rights go to the person whose name the vehicle is in. The white van was in Gabby's name. It was not shared. She owned it.
He got really frustrated with me, and he locked me out of the car and told me to go take a breather, but I didn't want to take a breather because I wanted to get going. We're out of water, but I wanted to sit in the car because all my stuff was in the car. I had none of my bags. I was working on something at the moment in the car, and he told me to just relax for a second, and I didn't want to relax, so I got really mad.
Gabby told the sunglassed officer twice her wishes as they pertained to her property during the conflict. This defined her intention very clearly as wanting to get back into her own car where all of her things were, and not as overtly attacking Brian.
Kind of looks like something like hit you in the face. And then over on your arm, shoulder, right here. That's new, huh? It's kind of a new mark.
Oh yeah, I don't know.
In comparison, Brian intended to take possession of something that was not rightfully his and injured Gabby in the process of doing so. This is a crime. The officer spoke about intention at great length while discussing whether or not to charge Gabby with domestic assault.
Was it her intention to do him bodily injury? Now, that's what we have to find out, because it says bodily injury is, that by definition, physical pain, illness, or any impairment of physical condition.
Well, he's got a swollen right eye.
We don't care what the result was, we care about the intent.
So we gotta go find intent.
If she did not intend to cause him pain or illness or to cause him impairment of physical condition.
Was it intent and attempt, or intent or attempt?
When you're attempting to do something, you have to intend to do it. If I attempt to get a basketball through a hoop, I have to intend to do it. Intent is implicit with attempt.
Right.
Okay, so what was her intent? What was her intention? If you go ask her, what was your intention when you were slapping him, and she says, I wanted him to hurt or be ill or impair his physical condition, then there's nothing we can do.
Okay.
One way to word it might be, hey, when you slapped him, were you intending to cause him physical pain? And let's get rid of illness because it has nothing to do with it. Physical pain or impairment of his physical condition. Was that your intention? Is that what you were attempting to do? That's what it says right here, an attempt.
Right.
Were you attempting to cause him pain or an impairment of physical condition? Whatever she answers to that question will seal her fate. Because the only way you know what she was attempting to do is by asking her.
Right.
Gabby's intent was to maintain possession of her own belongings, yet the officers only analyzed it in terms of whether or not she was assaulting Brian. How did this happen? One contributing factor is possession.
Very important question. How you answer this question is going to determine what happens next. But the only person who can answer this question is you. Think very hard before you answer the question. Do not quickly answer it. Think very hard. When you slapped him those times, were you attempting to cause him physical pain or physical impairment? Was that what you were attempting to do to him? No. What were you...
There is a saying that possession is 9/10 of the law, meaning that 9 out of 10 times the person who is holding possession of an item owns it. It was assumed that because Brian was driving the vehicle when they were pulled over that he owned it, but he didn't. This is the 1/10 scenario, and that distinction is something that officers should have discovered before making a judgment about Gabby's actions. Had they taken this into consideration, they may have seen the entire situation in a different light.
Strike the female. He saw the male trying to lock her out of the vehicle. She even told us that he was trying to lock her out, told her to go take a walk, so that she was trying to get in. She eventually couldn't get in and actually clawed her way in through the driver's door. He says, I don't understand why she's doing that. Well, I think it's because it was the only door that wasn't locked that she could get through. So she's trying to get.
The second contributing factor is systemic inequality. It is true that none of the officers on site made overly chauvinist or sexist statements. They did not outright discriminate against Gabby because she was a female. On the other hand, the male driving the car was assumed to have owned it. The female was painted as overly emotional and out of control, while the male displayed himself as rational and clear-minded. The officers bought into this narrative entirely while overlooking key details and warning indicators. Male-to-female biases played a role in this outcome.
But you tend to have a lot of anxiety and stress?
I have a lot of anxiety.
And what's his name? Is it Brian? Is he usually pretty patient with you?
Okay, so you said you pushed her to create some distance, obviously, right?
She seems like a really sweet girl, 22 or something, has a lot of anxiety, and from what she's claiming, she's the full-on aggressor here.
That's kind of what he was saying.
I've been over him. He's trying to disengage from her. I guess he hung her backpack on the back, probably so she'd have her shit, so that he didn't have to engage with her as far as her, being the aggressor. So at this point, unless the guy's screaming that he needs to go to jail and did something to this girl, it sounds to me like she is the primary. There was actually an injury too to the victim, which is him.
The end result was that Gabby was on the verge of being charged with domestic assault, and Brian was completely in the clear, regardless of the fact that he injured her while attempting to take possession of her vehicle and all of her belongings. At the end of it all, the officers categorized this as a mental health crisis rather than a domestic assault. The two were separated for the night and presumably met up the following day to continue their journey. In this video, I will not make any conclusion as to whether or not Gabby would have suffered a different fate had this traffic stop gone differently. I will, however, leave you with a few questions. What do you think the narrative in the van was like after this event? Brian had law enforcement validation that Gabby was overly emotional and would be able to leverage it in future arguments. He could claim that she was almost arrested due to her anxiety and volatility. What would have been different had it gone the other way? What if officers had almost charged Brian? What if they had told him he had no right to take the vehicle, and since he injured Gabby in the process, he was accountable? What if they had offered Gabby to press charges? What if they had gone further and charged him? How could this have affected Gabby's position in future arguments? Unfortunately, we will never know the answer to these questions. What would have happened had the officers viewed Brian as in the wrong rather than Gabby? Imagine this final conversation in reverse, had they been worried about her and not him.
Like how far do you want to go with this? Like, you know why the domestic assault code is there. It's there to protect people, especially the reason why they don't give us discretion on these things is because too many times women who are at risk want to go back to their abuser. They just wanted him to stop, and they don't want to have to be separated. They don't want him charged. They don't want him to go to jail, and then they end up getting worse and worse treatment, and then they end up getting killed. In no way, shape, or form that I can perceive does what happened here, a little slap fight between fiancés who love each other, want to be together, can I perceive that this is going to digress into the situation where he's going to be a battered man?
Thank you for watching to the end of this video. Please like it and consider subscribing to my channel with the notification bell turned on, as there will be further breakdowns going forward. If there is a case out there you would like to be covered, or if you have additional observations, questions, or conclusions, please leave it in the comments below. Bye, 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 bye.